So one of the teachings of Catholicism is that Mary is a virgin forever. And it's like, okay, well, how do you reconcile that with we just said here in the Bible, the same as the Catholics, that there's no consummation until afterwards, but the until implies that there's a state of affairs at this point, and then after a certain point, a different state of affairs takes over, i.e. she's not surely still a virgin. A very exciting day today, because with the Old Testament all done and behind us, we are now moving on to the New Testament. So today, for your convenience, I have read the entirety of chapters 1 and 2 of the book of Matthew. Matthew is the first book of the New Testament, one of the 4 Gospels. Gospel just meaning good news. So it's a basic biography of Jesus. There is some nuance around that, which we will come back to in the summary and look at. But I'm going to try and just read all this, sort of take it at face value on the assumption that this is intended to be taken seriously as a historical account. Slightly strangely, this isn't the first gospel to be written, and there's a load of other stuff that was written quite a long time before this. So this dates to roughly 80 or 90-ish AD. I think everybody basically agrees on that. So somewhere between 50 or 60 years after Jesus was crucified. But as I understand it, the book of Mark was written quite a bit before this, and a lot of Paul's letters that we'll come on to later as well were written before this as well. So this is by far not the earliest, so I don't quite know why it's the first one in the Bible, but I guess we will find out. I suppose perhaps some of the answer is that Matthew does seem particularly interested in prophecy. All the stuff in the Old Testament, which we've just read and gone through and survived, starts to come back into this, and like, okay, this is how Matthew is linking it all together. So I guess that perhaps makes sense of how you transition from one to the other. Interestingly, though, it begins with a lineage, because if you recall, the Messiah, never named as such, but very, very implied. I mean, there's no arguing that a lot of the Old Testament is pointing towards some dude coming and doing some stuff. Whether it's Jesus or not, we have to work out, but there's definitely something prophesied in there. The idea was that this was going to be a descendant from King David, and it was going to go down all through this line, and the line was unbroken through all the trouble in the Judah side of the Israelites. And here we open with this lineage of Jesus going not only back to David, but all the way back to Abraham, as it happens, which is amazing. I mean, I couldn't do my family history back more than about 4 generations, I don't think. If that, I'd struggle, I think, for that. I guess my mum could probably add another couple in. But yeah, a slight sceptical journey face. I think that people would know that necessarily. But then I guess if you are one of the descendants of David, then I guess you're going to keep record of it. So we'll let it have it, and we'll move on and just keep going. I realise that might sound like I'm giving it a bit of an easy time, which is I was sort of semi-accused of when I did the live thing. You know, you're being too nice to Christianity. It's like, actually, I'm just going where the facts are. But we are going to come back and test all this stuff hard. So, but if you keep doing it throughout the way, you're just going to lose the plot with the story anyway. So the problem with this anyway, of course, is this great big lineage is the lineage of Joseph, who, if you recall the whole Christmas story, is Jesus' adoptive dad, I guess, as it were. The problem is, of course, that the prophecy is supposed to be it's a descendant of David, which certainly implies biological. Doesn't state biological, but implies. And Jesus is not a biological descendant of Joseph. So it's not quite clear why Matthew's bothered. But Matthew does know that this is the fact, because it's all in the book as well, that Joseph isn't the father, or isn't the biological father. So, yeah, a bit weird. It does, however, it doesn't mess about this. There's no sort of, I think, a nice little build-up and suddenly big reveal. Yeah, hey, look, Jesus is the one they were talking about the whole time. It is straight in there that Jesus is the Messiah. And I think that does lend to it as being very factual writing. I suppose one thing to note, actually, we've got 4 Gospels here. There are other Gospels that aren't in the Bible. So there's a Gospel of Mary Magdalene, there's a Peter one and a Thomas one. As I understand it, all of those other ones that don't make the Bible all fail the reliability tests of the Gospels that we're going to be reading have all passed. So there is a reason why we're reading these ones and not others. So on that basis, I think it's reasonable that we'll take it for what it is and have a good go. We then come on to basically the Christmas story, or part of it, interestingly enough. The whole thing is not in here, so that's kind of cool. I thought I knew the Christmas story quite well. I didn't, as it turns out. But we have Joseph and Mary are due to be married. Mary then becomes pregnant, it says, by the Holy Spirit, whatever that means. But then I guess if you're Holy Spirit, you're basically God, aren't you? So it's not going to be beyond you to make someone pregnant. What I didn't realise is it talked about Joseph. He's got in his mind he's going to divorce Mary. And to be fair, you can't really blame him. I mean, you're due to marry this person. Suddenly they're pregnant and you didn't do it. And fortunately, there's an angel who comes along to Joseph, unfortunately in a dream, which is annoying. I don't like this whole dream vision thing. So unreliable, but there we go. And tells Joseph that, no, don't worry. God did it. It's all fine. It wasn't the milkman. You go ahead and get married. And that's all fine. Another interesting point is that it then talks about that the marriage is not consummated until after Jesus is born. Okay, so one of the teachings of Catholicism is that Mary is a virgin forever. And it's like, okay, well, how do you reconcile that with we just said here in the Bible, the same as the Catholics, that there's no consummation until afterwards, but the until implies that there's a state of affairs at this point, and then after a certain point, a different state of affairs takes over, i.e. she's not surely still a virgin. I don't know the answer to that and how Catholicism wrangles that. I sort of, in my head, they're stuck with some sort of doctrine thing that's from 1700 years ago that they can't now change because that would be a big deal, and suddenly the Pope's climbing down on this sort of thing, and it's not going to look good, is it? So I assume it just gets defended, albeit I'd be very interested to hear the Catholic defence of how they interpret that. But having had a little Google, it seems that they play on the word until, as in the word until doesn't necessarily mean that after that point they consummated. But yes, it does, doesn't it? I think you're pushing the bounds of reason, I think, if you try and go to that. So that's a really difficult position to defend if you're trying to be reasonable. Matthew makes the point anyway that this all links to Isaiah 7, chapter 14, which is the bit we talked about a long time ago, where there was a virgin would conceive and then have a child, and it would be called Emmanuel, and Emmanuel means God with us. Emmanuel is not the same word as Jesus, but I don't know. I think we've got English translations of names, so I think maybe there's something in there that's similar. We then, interestingly, we have none of this no room at the inn business and donkeys and all the rest of it. We go straight to the three wise men turn up, who are referred to as Magi in this. Well, it says Maggie, but I happen to remember that it was pronounced Magi, thankfully. These Magi, anyway, are the wise people. They go to Herod, who is an Edomite, which, if you recall, is basically been the sworn enemies of the Israelites for the last nearly 2,000 years or so. So the Jews, as in Israelites, are being ruled by by an Edomite king. So that must be pretty horrible. And this Edomite king is not happy about this, and also knows about the prophecy of a coming king of the Jews. So when the Magi come to him and say, yes, where's this kid? The king of the Jews is here. And he's like, hang on a minute, I'm the king of the Jews. But plays it very cool and says, oh, yes, perhaps if you could let me know where you find him, then I can come and worship him too. They're like, yeah, cool. They go off and find him. They find Jesus anyway in Bethlehem, and they do the gold, frankincense, myrrh thing. Fortunately, an angel comes to them in a dream again and says to them, don't go back to Herod, he was lying. And if they were that wise, hopefully they knew that already. But so they sneak off somewhere else without telling Herod where Jesus is. Oh yes, I forgot to say there, the Herod thing links to a prophecy in the book of Micah, chapter 5, which I can't remember off the top of my head. I did look it up before I did this. Something about something. Don't think it was very interesting. And it is the case that the wise men follow a star to Jesus. Not sure how that works in terms of physics. Seems a little odd, but we'll deal with that. Maybe at Christmas, actually. We'll have a bit of fun with that. An angel then comes to Joseph again and warns him that Herod is now properly after him, and Herod has given orders to kill every child under the age of 2, every boy under the age of 2 in the town of Bethlehem. Pretty extreme. This links, or Matthew links this to a prophecy in Jeremiah, I think it was, chapter 31. Having checked that, that's a little tenuous, I think, that one. I mean, it's, fine, but, we'll keep going. Joseph anyway takes Mary and Jesus and they hotfoot it to Egypt, where they go out there, which links to another prophecy, which was Hosea. I think it was Hosea. Yes, Hosea chapter 11. It's really hard to keep track of all these prophecies. You've got to go and look them all back up, each one. And there's 5 in this 2-chapter section. It's not then clear how long they're in Egypt, but then the angel comes to Joseph again, presuming a dream, that says, nope, it's okay, Herod's now dead, you can go home. Joseph takes Jesus and Mary home, but he's still concerned because Herod's son is still on the throne, and obviously again another Edomite, doesn't like them and going to feel threatened. So they go and hide in Nazareth in Galilee, or go and live in Nazareth. I think, that links to another prophecy, doesn't it? Yes, it does. I can't remember which one it is, but it says that this Messiah chap is going to be a Nazarene, which I thought had nothing to do with Nazareth necessarily, but because it was the shave head and don't drink wine thing, wasn't it? And as Nazarite, something like that. But he ends up in Nazareth anyway, which fulfills another prophecy as far as Matthew is concerned. The prophecy thing is hard, I think, because some of this is tenuous. Some of it, blinks, okay, that could work. But some of it looks like they're deliberately doing things just to tick the box of, we're going to go to Egypt, just so we can say we came from Egypt, and we'll go and pick Nazareth in Galilee because it says he's going to be a Nazarene. So it's sort of backwards, isn't it? I mean, if you prophesy something that someone knows about and then they do it, it's like, well, you knew about it, you're just doing that and ticking boxes. It makes more sense, I would have thought, as a prophecy if you didn't know it was a prophecy, but I don't know how you do that with the Bible. Or if it's within your control to choose an action that fulfills that. Albeit that whole line of reasoning is going to hit a snag later on, because obviously the prophecies are all that some really terrible things are going to happen. So Jesus wouldn't choose to have himself crucified. But so that's great fun getting started on the New Testament. It's quite dense with stuff, this, so I think this is going to take a lot of work to get through, in that you don't have to read very far before you fill up a whole page of notes and things to sort of really to tangle with. And half of that we're still leaving to the end anyway, the validity and reliability of it all and that sort of thing. But on we should go and see what's next.